Oh, my fellow Americans, so this is the place you continue to force entry to sing. Oh, great heavens.
Summary JFK. No witnesses. Come on, get the bodies. We gotta dig a second hole.
How on earth does he keep getting in here?
Roll tape, whatever. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Anything But Silent Cinema podcast. I'm your host today, Cody. And we're gonna start off this episode. You heard and saw nothing. Are we clear on that? Good. Now that we are, today's episode is going to cover compliments. Now, what do I mean by compliments? I'm not going to say something like you're pretty, although I'm sure you really are. But when I say compliments in the economic sense, I mean it in the economic sense. I mean, we're going to talk about how the film and the theater industries aided technology and in different branches of business in certain ways, and how that may have influenced one's rise and or fall. Now, to start us off, we're going to talk about, generally, how much did it cost to make a movie in 1920? Well, we hear about movies being made for millions of dollars and having to rake that back in. But in 1920, the average feature film cost $60,000 to produce. $60,000! I can buy a pretty decent car with that. What? And then by 1930, that price obviously inflated to $375 because they're realizing, well, these are pretty cool. People are going to pay a lot, and they're going to pay a lot more if we go and we make some cooler movies, so we might spend a little bit more. Now, theater is something much harder to account for, how successful something's going to be, if you're going to be able to recoup your money, how much it costs. But overall, it's extremely difficult to predict how much a show is going to make back. Your show could be a total flop, and it could suck. It could be the worst thing ever to see. Or it could be somehow the greatest thing, vice versa. But so now that we have that information out of the way, compliments. Obviously, the film industry benefits cameras. If you're going to shoot this brand new feature-length film, let's say, you're going to need a nice, fancy new studio film camera. You're going to need to buy the reels of film to produce it. Not to mention, you're going to need to get that developed, whether it be by a professional, a new studio, or somebody that you've hired. So we're already seeing here that the technology for this is incredible. We're already funding these new technological companies, these new businesses that are cropping up specifically to develop film. And, you're going to need to pay people to make props. You're going to need to pay for, lumber, metal, costumes, department stores, whatnot, what have you. And it's a similar thing with theater. You're going to need to pay for props, costumes, all of that, makeup. But for both, you're also going to need to either pay to get rid of them or pay to have your props stored after you're done. I mean, in a way, some get sold off, but back then, nobody really cared. Nobody thought that these things were going to make it huge and they were going to be super important icons of history. So most of the time, they would just either throw them into storage or, just throw them away in some dump somewhere. But even though these two were on a competitive playing field, they both benefited different kind of companies and technology in a similar way, in similar veins. However, just cinema kind of boosted more technology, whereas theater productions just kind of kept with the basics, because obviously they weren't using a lot of these fancy cameras and equipment. But that's going to wrap up a lot of the important topics of this episode. We're going to close out with our fun fact of the day like we usually do. The first Hollywood feature film to include a toilet or show it on film was Psycho, produced in 1960. Can't believe it took that long. Makes you really confounds your view of the world, I guess. But I've been Cody. This has been Anything But Silent Cinema. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.